What's up, everybody? Jumpin here. Hey, what's up, everybody? Jumpin here, and today I'm going to be bringing you some Krogan Warlord. He loves to smash heads and take names. He's a lot of fun to play, but I gotta be honest, the one thing I don't like about this guy is that, yes, he can easily be grabbed, and sometimes you could just get unlucky. A good example of that is you could be playing and you're going against Cerberus and there's a Centurion or a Nemesis, whatever. You go in, you melee it, but what you didn't know was there's a Phantom and she's sitting behind the wall, hiding in the room, and then boom, you're stabbed. So that can happen to anyone and it sucks. I gotta be honest. Don't like that about the Krogan Warlord, but besides that, he is a lot of fun to play. And I thought I did a really good job in this gameplay of not getting grabbed. Really kind of showing off different ways of fighting against brutes, fighting against banshees, and kind of making sure that you will not be sync killed. So if you pay close attention, you can kind of see this, like me attacking brutes at the right time, running away at the right time, same with banshees, all that kind of good stuff. So you should definitely pay attention to the gameplay because I promise you, it's pretty good stuff. But I also wanted to talk about something a little different today. Now, generally, I don't do this on YouTube. I don't really talk about myself all that much. I've done the Q&As and all that, but I never really go into details. So this is going to be the first official story time with Jumpin, which I can just tell stories really about myself, different encounters I've had, you know, little things like that. Really my life story about where I came from, you know, different experiences that I've been through, and, you know, some interesting stuff. I'll try to keep it pretty interesting. But for this first one, I decided that there's a question I get quite a bit. So, and I've answered it before. I've actually answered it probably 3 or 4 times, to be quite honest. But I'm really going to go into details this time so that you really understand the whole story. And the question that people generally ask me the most is, hey Jumpin, how did you get into gaming? And I guess that's an interesting question, being that I make videos about gaming. So, alright, to really understand me and gaming, you have to really understand where I came from growing up and all that, and really my background. So I got into gaming when I was about 10 years old, and it was because I got my first console, which was a Super Nintendo. That's exactly what happened. And before that, I played a little bit with my neighbors when I was like 8 or 9, and that's how I got exposed to gaming. And after a while, I wanted to buy a console. I wanted to play video games myself. But there's more to the story than that, and I'll get to that in a moment. Let's go ahead and start with the beginning, which is me growing up. When I was growing up, I grew up on the south side of St. Louis, which is pretty much considered to be somewhat of a ghetto. And it's in an inner city. Now, St. Louis itself is an actual pretty small city. It's considered to be a large city, but when you kind of compare it to a bigger city like Chicago or LA or New York, it's a small city. But there's enough people to really call it a large city. It's a little confusing, but I don't see it as large, where other people, they do. Anyway, basically, growing up, you know, I grew up in the inner city. I grew up in the ghetto or whatever. And honestly, I enjoyed it for the most part. Like, looking back now, especially, when I was growing up, I guess I didn't like it all that much. Especially as I got older, 13, 14. I didn't really like it. I didn't dig it anymore. But as a kid, I never really thought of it much because I had a lot of friends in my neighborhood, and I never really looked at people as in like I'm white and you're black or you're Mexican or Latino or whatever. Like I never really viewed people as that because my mom kind of taught us and brought us up that way. My mom is by far the most non-racist person on this planet. I mean, she really has no hate in her heart at all for anyone else. She sees everyone as the same, and she gets along with everybody. My mom is unique like that. So she has never seen people of like, oh, you're this or you're that. So she kind of brought us up, me and my sister, because I only have one sibling, and it's my sister. And she brought us up that way to kind of not view people in a certain way. And really just taught me that there's always bad and good. And that's true. Like, there's bad black people, yes, but there's a lot of good black people. There's a lot of bad white people, too. And there's a lot of good white people. And that goes for everyone on this planet. Even Arabs and Middle Eastern people that a lot of Americans we kind of view as, oh no, they're the bad guys. No, they're not. I mean, you got the certain bad ones, the crazy ones, true, but you have a lot of good ones. So that's the way that I think everyone should really view other people, because that's the way I was brought up, and I thought that was a good thing. But really getting back to the whole story, so that's where I grew up, and that's what I was taught as a child, but we did grow up very poor. I was definitely poor. Reason for this primarily was because, my mom was a single mother, raising 2 kids in the inner city, whatever. And that was because my father, he was arrested and sent to prison, and when I was about 3 years old. Now, I could get into that story. Believe me, that story is some crazy shit. My dad is a really interesting person, but not in a good way. I mean, obviously he went to prison, so you kind of get the idea. He's not necessarily a good person. But it is an interesting story, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time, because if I was to get into that, then literally that would just be this whole video. And I don't want that. So, let's go ahead and talk about this. Like I said, growing up in the inner city or whatever, I was exposed to all these different cultures. And I had a lot of black friends, and I went to probably an 80% black school, to be quite honest. And it was always kind of weird and awkward, I guess, that being the only white person amongst a whole bunch of other people, that's very true. But at the same time, it really didn't bother me all that much. But I would be lying if I said that I always felt comfortable. No, that's a lie. And I think that goes with almost everybody. If you're a black person and you're in a room of nothing but white people, you can feel a little uncomfortable. Same with a white person in a room with a whole bunch of black people. And this goes for every race and every person for the most part. It's almost a natural feeling that we have as humans. But for the most part, to be honest, I pretty much got along with everyone. And to this day, I still do. So, I mean, that's just me. But anyway, back to the actual story. Like I said, so we grew up in the inner city. It was rough. We grew up poor. And when I say we grew up poor, I mean we definitely grew up very poor. But what was always interesting to me was that we never went without, me and my sister. Like, as a younger child, I definitely was into toys. Like, that was what I was all about. I still remember to this day waking up, like, before school, 7 a.m., watching Beast Wars, man. Beast Wars was my shit. And I loved Transformers in general. Had so many different Transformer action figures. And my sister, she was into Barbies and all that. And we never went without. My mom was always good about that. Yes, we didn't have a lot of money. And yes, we were on food stamps. We had, at times, welfare. We had a lot of government help and all these other things because we had to have it. But unlike a lot of people, which really gives these programs a bad name, like food stamps and welfare, my mother, she never did anything selfish with this money. She always would spend this money on us, which was the purpose of the money, is for the children, generally. If you want food stamps, if you want welfare, things like that, you make a stronger case if you have children. Now, if you go and you sell your food stamps for crack or some really selfish, stupid reason like that, then yeah, that's terrible. Same with if you take your welfare check or you're collecting welfare and yet you're going out buying a lot of nice clothes or nice rims. I don't know, but that's the truth. A lot of people, they abuse the system, where my mom, she never did. So, like I said, through just being able to kind of hustle. And before you say some ignorant shit like, oh, your mom was a prostitute. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is this, is that let's say, I wanted a toy as a child, or my sister wanted a Barbie, my mom would make sure that we got those things. We were pretty much somewhat spoiled, to be honest, when it came to things like that. But then, she would figure out a program of some sort to help with the electric bill or the gas bill, things like that. So, my mom was really always good at that kind of stuff, like getting help if we needed it. So, like I said, as a child, we never really went without, and that was really cool. And one interesting thing about me and my sister, we had a really strong bond growing up. Like, because you have to realize, it was really just me, my sister, and my mom. My dad's side of the family, like my grandpa, my grandma, and my uncles and aunts, and all those people, they pretty much disowned us because when my dad went to prison, my mom got a divorce because he was a terrible person. And it was a good thing she got a divorce for sure. But at the same time, it really upset his side of the family, and they kind of took it out on me and my sister. Although we were his flesh and blood, they didn't care. They didn't want nothing to do with us. So, fuck them. But at the same time, we were all on our own. And it was okay with us. Like, we got along really well. And me and my sister, like, for example, we would share. Like, my mom never really taught us about sharing or really told us that we should share. But me and my sister, we always were really good about that. If she needed something, I would always be so quick to let her have it or use it. It was never a discussion of jealousy or anything like that. It was always good. And to this day, me and my sister, we still have a very strong bond because of this. We get along very well. We were just happy. Me and my sister, we both had really good childhoods, happy childhoods. I mean, yes, the situation wasn't always great, but we always found a way to still be happy, or at least my mom found a way to make us happy. And that was always such a awesome thing about growing up. Besides, just the whole family aspect and how we were happy, me and my sister at least, I mean, we had a lot of neighborhood friends. And we would always go play kickball, or we would ride our bikes, something like that. We had bikes and we would always go ride them. And this is like, early ages, like 5, 6, 7, 8, those kind of ages, 9. And my sister was like 2 years older than me, so she was like 11 or whatever it might have been. And we had a lot of fun. Like, we had a lot of friends, and like I said, we also had neighbors. Now, where I lived on my block, we had two family flats primarily. What that means, if you don't know, is that pretty much you take an older house. Every house on my block was like 100 years old. No joke. And you take an older house and you basically transform it into two apartments. And it's honestly, it's not the best way of living. I gotta be honest, because it's kind of like you're too close to your neighbors. Like, you can kind of always hear what they're doing and what they're saying, and it can be kind of not good at times. Like, you know what I mean. But anyway, we had all these different people at times living below us because we always lived on the second floor. And we had these one neighbors, and it was so cool, like, really looking back now, like, just remembering the times that we had with our neighbors, because they lived there for like, I don't know, 3 years or 4 years, something like that. And we would always hang out with the younger kids and stuff. Basically, it was one woman, she was a single mother as well, and her name, no joke, was Bonnie Jean. Now, Bonnie Jean, she was a no bullshit kind of lady. Like, she didn't take anything from her kids, and she was a hardworking single mother. And then she had about 6 kids, honestly. The oldest was like 14, and his name was Duke. Now, I'm not making that up. That's a nickname, obviously. I couldn't even tell you his real name because everyone called him his nickname, Duke. And the second oldest, which was I think about 13 or maybe 12, his name was Nookum. That is not bullshit. And it had nothing to do with the game, by the way. That was just their nicknames, Duke and Nookum. So once I found out about that game later on, I was like, that is really funny that their nicknames was Duke and Nookum. So I can't remember the rest of the names, but I know there was like a 10-year-old and maybe like an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, a baby. But, we got along really well with our neighbors because we would always just hang out. Like, we would go down to their house and we would go outside, play kickball. You got to realize nobody had father figures, so if unless we were throwing a football around with each other, more than likely we weren't going outside and throwing the ball with our dads or anything like that. We were strictly throwing footballs to one another. But anyway, we always would hang out, ride bikes, all that kind of cool stuff. But I remember we would go down when I was about 8 or 9. We would go down to my neighbors and play Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. We didn't have game consoles because honestly, we just didn't have the money for them at the time. My mom, like I said, we grew up very poor. And the thing was is that they did though. Like they had Sega, they had Mortal Kombat, they had Super Nintendo and Mario and all this cool stuff. And I remember just going down there and playing with them and just having a blast. Me and my sister, we all enjoyed the gaming consoles. But what really started to change like my whole existence and made me become a gamer was at first somebody hopped the fence and stole me and my sister's bikes. And these are little kids' bikes, but yet somebody definitely hopped our fence and stole our bikes, which wasn't the end of the world because my mom, she felt so bad because we were so upset. Me and my sister were so sad about that because that's what we did primarily. We would go out and ride bikes. So my mom, really had to figure out something and she was able to basically buy us new bikes. And that was really cool. And we were on those bikes for a while, but then what happened to me was is that at this time I was probably like 10 and I was rolling around on my bike and I don't know, basically some older kids, probably like 14 and 13, 12, things like that, just older than me at least, seen me and decided that, they were going to jump me. And that was the first time I was ever actually jumped. And that's not the only time I was jumped, but that was the first time. And they jumped me and stole my bike basically. And I didn't know the kids at all, so it was just like, I'm fucked. No bike, and it was so bad because it was probably like 2 months after I got this bike. Like, and we had the first bikes stolen, and then I had my bike stolen. So after that, I just wasn't interested anymore. And honestly, things kind of changed. It just became tougher and tougher to really want to be that outdoor kid because as I was getting older, they were getting a little crazier. Like I was getting into more fights because I got into fights quite a bit, but it was getting worse and worse. So I just kind of didn't want to go outside as much anymore. And slowly but surely, like that's really what ended up happening. I just kind of told my mom, like, I really want a game console. Now, at the time, it really didn't matter was it going to be Nintendo or Sega, but she got me a Super Nintendo. More than likely, the Super Nintendo was cheaper or something, that's why she bought it. So I got the game console, got the Super Mario, and started playing all that. And then over time, I got really addicted to just playing games and not really ever wanting to go outside all that much and play outside and do these things. So I just kind of became a house kid, to be quite honest. That and, like I said, things as I got older got worse, for me at least. And it became rough for sure, but that is really where I started with gaming, was just growing up in the inner city and kind of not wanting to be exposed to the outside world, or at least the world around me at the time, because it was rough. So, I don't know. I mean, things kind of would have they been better if I never even got into gaming? That's always a question I ask myself. I would say no, but I would also say yes in a way because things got although yes, I was really into gaming, things at my school wasn't always the greatest. I was pretty popular for the most part in high school, but leading up to high school, no, I was not. I mean, I kind of wore glasses when I was younger. I was chubby, and that came primarily from gaming, just eating snacks and playing video games, not being active. I was chubby, wore glasses, I was white, so that was a thing as well. But really getting back to the whole gaming thing, I mean, I started playing Super Nintendo. I loved it when I was about 10 years old. Then I got the Nintendo 64. Eventually, I got the GameCube. I was a huge Nintendo fanboy, honestly. It was Nintendo or nothing. When PlayStation was out, I wasn't interested in PlayStation 1 because I was like, nope. They are trying to compete with Nintendo, and Nintendo is my shit. So I wanted no part of PlayStation. But with PlayStation 2, I did play it honestly with my friends and other people who I knew who had a PlayStation 2. I watched them play it or whatever. And eventually I ended up buying an Xbox, and I can't really tell you why I bought an Xbox. It wasn't because of Halo, although it could have been. I'm not too sure. Like, I don't really remember that aspect. I think it might have been because of Halo. Like, I seen the game and I thought it looked cool, but I kind of just think I wanted to do something a little different. I was so against Sony. That was kind of the thing. Like, I didn't really like Sony because I was so big into Nintendo and because of PlayStation 1 versus N64 and all that. I wasn't going to buy a PlayStation 2. So the Xbox, I think, was more appealing just on that aspect alone. And you guys all know how I feel about Xbox now, but that's not really Xbox. It's more about Microsoft and their decisions and their attitude about those decisions. But yeah, that's really my early experience with gaming, like how I got into it and why I got into it. And I've enjoyed it ever since. It's been a wonderful trip, and I honestly think that I will be a gamer my entire life. Even if I don't do YouTube, and even if I have kids and a wife and a career, I think that I will always still find some time, somehow, to play a video game for, an hour a day or a couple hours a week if that's what it takes. But I still think that I'm gonna do that. Maybe enjoy it with my children. I don't know, but gaming is such a big part of my life right now that I can't see myself getting away from it 20 years from now. I still think that I would always find time for gaming somehow. So I think that's really cool personally. But you guys tell me your story. How did you get into gaming? Because I just told you my story. I want to know your story. What was your first experience with gaming? Let me know. I'm very interested in this. So be sure to leave a comment and tell me. I would love to read it. But besides all that, this is pretty much it. So I hope you have enjoyed it. Please like this video for me. I would really appreciate that. And you guys have a very nice day. Peace out.